Hey y'all, today I'm going to be breaking down the rogue bosses on customs, where to find them, the best ways to fight them, and which weapons you should use. As usual, timestamps are in the description if you'd like to navigate around the video. Stick around and let's get into it. So it's probably worth mentioning where these guys spawn first. So when the rogue bosses are on customs, which seems to happen on a cycle between maps, they have a 12% spawn chance. They can spawn around the fortress location, in between Fort and Crackhouse, and at Crackhouse itself. Typically I find them in and around the fort the most, however I've also seen them behind the train tracks of Fortress as well. Alright, so which guns should you use to kill the goons? Typically you'll want a gun that can shoot somewhat fast with high damage and pen. For me, I find that the mutant with BP ammo works really well, but some other options that would work might be the 7.62 MDR or the FAL with M61, the RD704 or an AKM with BP, an AS Val with at least SP6, and an MP7 with FMJ. Now, if you have a go-to gun that you love, of course don't change due to what I said. These are just some recommendations. Now it's time for the fun part. Let's start with how to kill them from Crackhouse. Firstly, when you're approaching Crackhouse, you're going to want to run across this small road really fast, as the bosses will shoot at you if they catch a line of sight. It is also worth noting that they do sometimes spawn closer to Crackhouse. In this clip here that I'm showing, they were practically right outside of it and I unfortunately died to them. Now once you're inside of Crackhouse, run upstairs like I do here and post up in this doorway. Even if the bosses did not shoot at you, I've had them rush me without even shooting at me first. So it's best if you at least preemptively hold an angle for just a few seconds in case. Now if you've held for a few seconds and haven't been pushed yet, you'll probably need to aggro the bosses, and here's how you do that. To do this, it's gonna take a bit of courage, but you'll want to strafe in front of the windows on second story as you see me doing here. I'm going to skip forward a bit since it did take me a few tries to actually get them to shoot me, but I immediately hit the ground as soon as I got shot at. Now at this point the bosses will run over to surround your building, but in my experience will not push into the building if your doors are closed. Now after I aggroed them, I ran downstairs and went into the food area. I actually got surprised by Knight sitting outside of this window and got stuck in the corner. In the few encounters I've had with the bosses, I almost always see Birdeye down by this cabin, so it is definitely worth it to check it carefully. I did sit in this corner for quite a long time since I wasn't sure if Knight had moved yet, but something I definitely cannot recommend enough is using grenades to make them yell and move. Sometimes they won't move, but generally I find if the grenade is close enough to them, it draws them out really well and will move them into a run animation. You can actually see that the second grenade I threw worked and did cause Knight to move, as well as causing Birdeye to start running, which gave me a free kill on him. Again, I wasn't sure if Knight was actually still at that shack, so I pushed back upstairs to re-aggro Bigpipe. He immediately shot at me through the window, so I proned again and then moved into this little room. Now like I'd mentioned earlier, I find that these bosses don't really push you through doors anymore, so I decided to open up this side door and draw their fire. Then I tried to have them push me by peeking the door carefully multiple times. I'm going to skip all the unsuccessful attempts since it actually took me around 3 entire minutes to have them actually aggro me. After a lot of peeks, I heard a yell, so I ran back into my room and held a right angle peek. Very soon after, Knight pushes into the building and I down him. Roughly 10 seconds later, Bigpipe pushes in and that is the squad wipe completed. Definitely nerve-wracking for sure. So now to summarize how to fight the goons on Crackhouse. Number 1, initially aggro them until they push outside of your building. After that, you're going to want to carefully peek the window on the first floor, being careful not to peek too much. Once you've either killed one or gone a long time without much change, open up at least one door and try to aggro the remaining bosses, then immediately post up when you succeed at that. Finally, when they push you, hope that you can kill them really quickly before they actually stop running and kill you first. Definitely a little bit of luck involved in that. So that's how you kill the trio on Crackhouse side. I'm going to discuss the tactics for old gas station side now, but keep in mind this is definitely a much more difficult attack and I really would not recommend taking this route if it's possible, but it is definitely good to know just in case you're caught off guard. Alright, so I started off from the train tracks here. I would say that I was positioned in what might be the worst possible spot. Generally if you can, I'd say to hug the side of Fortress since they really enjoy shooting you from the second floor of Fortress. Now, as I ran behind Fort here, I actually did get shot from Bigpipe to my right. Just as I made it under the building, you can actually see Birdeye post up at the edge of the second floor. Now, once you make it to these stairs, if you were aggroed like I was, hold a really hard angle expecting a push. I'm actually kind of surprised that I wasn't pushed here, however that does sometimes happen. At this point, since they seemingly weren't aggroed on me anymore, I decided to utilize my grenades to see if I could hear them yell. After that, I carefully pushed up on these stairs to see if I'd be able to spot any of the bosses. You really need to be careful here, as the bosses really like to sit outside of the fort for some reason. At this point, I wasn't really sure where the bosses had gone, so I carefully moved around the first floor, trying my absolute best to remain in as much cover as possible. At this point, when I peeked the main door, Knight was sitting right in the open, so I sprinted right back to the bottom of the stairs and waited for a push. Bigpipe pushed me from the other entrance, which I'd mentioned earlier to be careful of, and really caught me off guard. I nearly lost this fight, so you really have to be careful of that. Thankfully for me, Knight and Birdeye didn't push me here, otherwise I surely would have died. And you gotta be careful as well, because they really like to push after you kill one of them as well. After I healed up, I pushed back up on these stairs, and like I said earlier, Knight was sitting directly outside of the building, and he almost took my head off. I'm not sure why he didn't shoot me there. Like before, I ran downstairs and both Birdeye and Knight pushed me this time. You gotta be careful because sometimes they'll push right at the same time and you could run out of ammo. So just make your shots count. So basically the summary for this side is the exact same as with Crackhouse. However, the only difference I'd say is try to stay as close to the fort as possible when you're approaching and make sure you're ready for a push from either entrance. Besides that, you should also ensure that you give yourself enough space not to be barrel stuffed if they run directly into you. So that's how you take down the goons on customs. I really hope you manage to find them and succeed with killing them. If you like this video, take a look at my other videos on screen and let me know in the comments below if you found the rogue bosses yet this wipe. Thanks for watching and have a great day.